Good afternoon and welcome to 50.1 to the Point. Michael Kaplan here alongside our soldier once again, Pete Jan Hoonen.
Hello.
And Pete, thanks for joining us. We're here to talk leadership, and within the past week, Golden State Warriors beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals, and we saw a lot of leadership on display. Pete, what did you observe, and what kind of lessons do we glean from it?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. It's great to be back on the Point, and the Golden State Warriors defeated the Cleveland Cavaliers 4-2 last week, and there were a lot of leadership lessons that we could look at, a lot of leadership personalities that we could draw upon, LeBron, and et cetera. But one that I thought was really interesting was the Warriors coach, Steve Kerr. You know, he was a rookie coach. He was tapped to replace a very popular Mark Jackson back before the season started. And there were some very early decisions and very early steps that he took when he took the leadership role that I thought paid off in the finals in June. Mm-hmm. One in particular was his decision to have an early conversation, a series of conversations with a perennial all-star on his roster, Andre Iguodala. And Iguodala had been, just a great scorer, renowned defender for many years. And Steve Kerr did some analysis and realized that they would be better off if they could bring Iguodala off the bench. And so Steve Kerr and his staff had a series of conversations with Andre and explained to him the big picture, what they were trying to do, what they were trying to accomplish in June when they wanted to win the finals. And of course, a perennial all-star, he didn't want to hear it early on, but he stuck with the program. They continued to communicate. He and Kerr developed a pretty good rapport during the course of the season. So by the time we get to June, by the time the Warriors go down 2-1 to LeBron and the Cavaliers, Kerr has a ready Iguodala on the bench, calls him off the bench and has him start his first game of the entire season. He started the last, 3 games of the series. Ends up not dominating LeBron, but neutralizing him in key moments, and he ended up being the most valuable player. So I think for that reason, Steve Kerr was the most valuable communicator for the work that he did earlier in the season.
Well, and you said good leadership on display with Steve Kerr, other players, but Iguodala as well as a veteran to kind of show other players on his team that, I'm not above the organization, right, perhaps.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk in the news about people who are, team players and all that, but it really shows up in moments like that when you're asked to take on a role that you weren't prepared for, but for the good of the team, you swallow it and you move on and do your job. So great inspiration for a lot of people out there. And we at 50.1, obviously we love to look at the news, love to watch sports, but we're always trying to draw lessons that we can take out and share with our clients. And one of the key ones that I think this expresses is the importance of senior leaders to always be talking to the troops. And that means having conversations directly with people who work for you in your organization, maybe volunteers, members, and having face-to-face direct conversations with them on a routine basis, explaining what your vision, what your leadership plan is all about, but listening to them come back to you. And it does a lot of things. It builds organizational support for your philosophy. It makes people feel more connected to the organization. And then you actually learn something along the way and can be a better leader.
And we say talking to the troops, you being a West Point grad and having a great knowledge and understanding the history of the Army and U.S. Armed Forces, any particular leaders stick out to you most in terms of following this talk to the troops and these principles that really make teams successful?
Well, a lot of times when we talk about some of the great leaders in the past and their communication styles, people like Patton and MacArthur come out because they were big personalities and they gave stirring speeches and they were blood and guts kind of folks. But as a communicator that exemplifies the talk to the troops mentality, nobody better than Dwight Eisenhower, who was the first 5-star flag officer in the United States military and was the commander of Allied forces at D-Day in Normandy. He was a real humble guy. He wasn't a big personality, and he had a way of not trying to be one of the guys, but going down to their level, talking to the soldiers. Here's a very famous photo of General Eisenhower talking to members of the 101st Airborne Division before they got ready for their airborne launch behind the lines in Normandy, France. And this picture illuminates the humility and the style that he had of talking to the troops. And so I think for me, Eisenhower is a great example of this willingness to, talk to people.
So with Steve Kerr, not only do you have 2 different types of leaders in the sense of what their missions were, but different times, yet the same values and principles apply.
Absolutely. And I think different situations entirely, the scale of these efforts. But right now, across the country, across the world, big organizations, small organizations are all being led by people who face the same set of challenges.
Right.
how to know enough, how to transmit enough, and how to keep your team moving forward. And so we think talking to the troops is a really key component of that, no matter who you are, where you are, what kind of organization you serve.
So when we think about all the advice and best practices that we suggest to clients,
Sure.
What's the takeaway here for them?
Well, I mean, it's always how do we get started? No matter if you do this already on a routine basis, how can you do it better? If it's something that doesn't come to you naturally, how can you start to do this and start to reap the dividends? And sort of the 3 steps that we thought about. The first one is to listen. You don't have to go down there and start talking right away. You can go down to the organization wherever the people are and just ask them to tell you what's going on. They will tell you what is going on. So just start by listening. Eventually, they're going to start asking you questions, and we always recommend strongly that people practice before they start going out and doing these things. The key moment comes when you get those first difficult questions, and they know what they're tougher than the Wall Street Journal, tougher than Congress. They'll get those tough questions. Answer those questions directly. If you sidestep in that moment when you get the expected tough questions, you're going to lose a lot of what you're trying to gain here in terms of momentum. So answer those questions directly. And then finally, this isn't something you can just do in a day and say, well, I checked the block. I talked to the troops, let's go play 18 holes. No, you got to do it every day. You got to make it part of your routine. And good leaders are good communicators, and they're down there with their folks on a daily basis.
And we're going to bring it back to the Steve Kerr example, and he did it so admirably. We saw what he did in the finals for a stretch of 2 weeks. But as you said, he made a routine. He made it part of the culture for an 82-game season that stretched back to last August. So it became part of the culture. Well, Pete, thank you so much for this insight today on leadership and more values. He's got more insight to share. We'll take it to Twitter if you have any more questions, and we'll be sure to send out your latest column on CEO.com that touches on the subject matter. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.